In The Boys on Amazon Prime Video, real-life superheroes are celebrities revered as godlike figures, keeping the community safe in this parallel world almost like our own. The show explores what happens when these heroes go rogue and abuse their powers. I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor here at Gold Derby, here with David Blass, the show's production designer, responsible for bringing this world to life. Dave, what is the most challenging part of world building for a new series, particularly a genre series like this one?
For me, the hardest thing in world building for The Boys was you knew what you want, what to expect. We were going really right at the Marvel and DC world, but of course we couldn't do Marvel and DC. So you want to give the audience what they expect. It's like, here's the big blockbuster world, but translated to the TV budget that we could do, but also give them the big bang for the buck. So it's like you want to give people I'm going to a theater experience of an experience in superheroes, but also give them the behind the scenes as well. So it's kind of it's a balancing act, because what we're doing is we're pulling back the curtain on superheroes. So it's the idea of going, okay, well, we want to show them the big budget look, but also the behind the curtain thing as well.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I realized I was thinking, this would have been a really difficult line to walk, because a lot of the superhero genre has been done so many times before, and you obviously want to set it apart from what we've seen in the past. And so obviously that was one of the factors that you took into account when building and designing for the show, right?
A lot of it, what we did was, I would design it more. I started out designing it more like a Marvel movie. And we had our Stillwell character, and she was in charge of the advertising and the marketing of the superheroes. And I had this super high concept, design for her room. And our showrunner, Eric Kripke's like, no, dude, she's just an advertising executive. She's not like in a fictitious superhero world. It's as if you walked into someone at CAA or Universal, and it's like, it's their regular office. So she's a normal person who's breastfeeding her kid, and she's just normal. And all of a sudden you gotta go, oh, okay. And then we kind of scaled it back. But at the same time, you had to design the world so that if all of a sudden a superhero walked into the room, that it felt congruent to the world, and it didn't feel like, okay, this guy's just dressed up in a superhero costume. It's like a cosplay. So there had to be a balance between everything. Had to be a little bit ramped up, but not too ramped up. And it was finding that delicate balance and where to play the tones and where to play the individual nuance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the major features of your work on the show are the gleaming, grandiose corporate offices and boardrooms of the Vought Corporation. For people who haven't seen the show yet, that's the multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that manages these superheroes but covers up their dirty secrets. What are the main aspects of those sets and those designs that you're most proud of? Because there's some beautiful work that you've done, especially on the exterior building and also in those boardrooms.
In designing the Vought world, we wanted to really play as if it was, a real corporation. But then for the superhero spaces, it was that thing of going, okay, these people have the biggest egos and the biggest paychecks and the biggest everything. But it's being made, and they're surrounded by people who are just kissing up to them. And it's like, it's the full-on kissing ass, and I have a giant ego. So they're like halfway between Donald Trump and a Kardashian, mixed together, but with superpowers. So it's the whole idea of going, they want what they want, and they get what they want because everyone kisses up to them. And if they don't get it, then they're a superhero. You don't want to screw with Homelander. So it's the idea that we created these places that were somewhat godlike. So we played off a lot of architecture of like Washington, D.C. with domed frescoes and sculptures and things like that. Something that these guys would see themselves as historical figures, and that the whole idea of these superheroes and throughout time, and it's like they have become not just caricatures or what that we would have in comic books, but no, they're real people. So it's like that thing that they would have statues and that they would have it, but also the marketing that you would have with it as well. So when you go into the Vought office, they have things on the walls from marketing campaigns, and we tried to do a lot of integration with companies to do real advertising and things like that. We have A-Train holding a Red Bull because he's the speedster. So it was a lot of fun working with that, but we really wanted to go over the top in their areas that says, you know, these guys just have massive egos and it's just overflowing it into the design. And so we had the big main boardroom that we just said, okay, how far can we push this? And we pushed, you know, a giant conference table with the shape of the bot logo that was 22 feet across and cantilevered. And everyone's looking at me going, do you think that's too much? I go, yes, it is too much. And that was the whole point. And, you know, we ended up adding all these computer monitors, and they're like, oh, we should have some tech. I'm like, but they're not looking at anything. These guys are just sitting there drinking all day if they're going to hang out and do whatever, because the whole idea is that superheroes, they're not nice people. They're just there to try to make their money and do their thing and let everyone else take care of stuff. But they're really just not that interested in saving people, which I just love that angle.
Oh, yeah, I love it too. And I was immediately taken with, now I could be wrong because I'm not a designer, so forgive me if you don't agree, but I loved the juxtaposition of like the futuristic modern lines that you used. And to me, it was like an antiquated Roman aesthetic. And you mentioned the godlike stuff, but I love the busts and the godlike relief sculptures and the huge columns in the same room as the mahogany and the V-shapes and the sci-fi panels. Did you get a lot of, you kind of touched on this, but did you get a lot of pushback? Because that's really kind of crazy, but it works really beautifully for the show.
Well, it's funny when people talk about that room, they look at the set and they're like, oh, I love those columns. And I said, you know what? That's being a TV designer, because I'd like to sit there and say, yes, this is a part of my grand vision. But when you're a TV designer and you don't have a soundstage, you end up in a warehouse that actually has posts every 16 feet. So though they look really cool, they're actually a design element that is covering a support post that is holding up the building. And there's actually posts outside the window, and you're like, oh, we have these sweeping pieces that look also Calatrava-like outside. And I'm like, no, those are hiding more posts and thing. And it was just going form and function and really wrapping it around. But we did get a certain amount of pushback on, like, is this to this? And it was really working that delicate balance, especially when you get into something like we had the bathroom. And it's like the first superhero bathroom ever seen. And I'm really excited that I was able to show where the soups poop. And we had this whole thing where we had designed it, and it was called cape clips, where the superheroes would clip their cape onto it, and it would rise up behind them so they could sit down and do their business. Because how do you actually go to the bathroom and sit down when you have a cape on? It's actually impossible to do. So we had to think about a lot of things, like how superheroes do their business.
See, like, it not only is it, the aesthetic, it's the form and the function, and that's it's very important for a designer to take that into account.
Well, it's the things you don't think about when you're designing. We had to custom design the chairs that they sit in that room, because if you actually go back through the history of superheroes and chairs don't work. You can go back to all the the Batman films and everything, the junket. If you have a cape on, you can't get into a car. There's no running into a car. So we actually tracked all the superhero films back to see how do they deal with capes and sitting. Almost none of them ever do it. You almost never. Christopher Reeve had a really great scene where he's having dinner with Margot. I don't want to say Margot Robbie, but. Yeah, and he does this like grab flip and does it really quick, but they had multiple capes, so he had a shorter cape for certain scenes. But he does this really weird thing. But I had actually had the opportunity to work with Adam West back in the day, and he had a whole incident where he's climbing into a helicopter and he fell down because he's trying to open the door and get into the helicopter while wrangling his cape, and he ended up falling. And it's like one of those things, like, you never really think about that. How did, is there an eloquent way to sit down and then you end up sitting on your cape and shit? But Anthony had the biggest cape, and we actually worked with him and created a wider platform that the chairs are specifically designed for him and his cape, so he could basically kind of sashay into there and drop the cape and sit on it. But we spent weeks working on that, whether and how we were going to do that and whatnot. So it's the things you don't think about when you're just watching.
That's right. Okay. This is why I love speaking to designers, because I never ever would have thought about that. So that's
one of the other ones we were going to try was a short back chair, so we could have them do what's called the Riker Maneuver. And if anyone ever watched the old Star Trek Next Generation, the character Riker has a very interesting. He always kind of hurdles a chair when he sits in it. He never sits in it. He basically keeps his leg over the top of it and sits down. And if you're not looking at it, you'll completely miss it. But then if you go back and watch it, you go, oh my God. And it was because the actor had a problem with his back. But it's just the most brilliant thing that you never noticed that's in every single Star Trek The Next Generation thing, is watching this guy sit down and you're going, that's just so cool. But we ended up going with a custom design chair. But and again, that's part of the world building, and it's a great aspect of the show.
And then on the other hand, the good guys are the boys, the scruffy group of misfits who are banding together to expose the Seven, who are the most famous of the superheroes. And so talk us through the design principles for them, because it's like a switch. The bad guys are in these gleaming towers. The good guys are in these dungeons or these very dark and dirty places, right?
It was interesting because we definitely wanted to have the juxtaposition, and I had the color palettes of the earth tones and the rustic, the bricks and the broken glass and the cracking, peeling stuff, and then the over here the nice glass glitz, polished aspects, and kind of how, regardless of which environment you went in, a superhero could play well in either of them because they would go back and forth. But you wanted to know immediately which cast of characters you were dealing with. And even Huey's apartment was kind of in that same tonal thing, was very earth tone, very woodsy, and had a lot of texture to it. So you immediately know, okay, I'm dealing with the boys now. But it got to be that thing of, every episode we would blow up the boys, safe house. And they're like, okay, we got to find another house. Okay, so we got to find another place that has this tonal range that doesn't look like this, but kind of looks like this, but it's a different place. And then it's an old restaurant or it's an old this, and we're always trying to find something new and interesting and pushing it. I wanted to find like an old bowling alley or something that they could have gone into, and it was as the season continued on, we found more interesting places. But it was great because and even with when we were finding locations for the boys, the exterior, which is Roy Thompson Hall, one of the things I really wanted to do was go straight at the superhero thing, because there's a scene in X-Men where Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen meet on a bridge, on an interior piece of Roy Thompson Hall. I'm like, and everyone's like, oh, well, yeah, we can't do that because that's X-Men. I go, yes, this is a place where superheroes exist. Everyone knows it. So when I show it to them again, they're like, well, it makes sense because that's where superheroes go. And everyone's like, oh, logic, yeah. So it feels right because it is right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That makes total sense to me. So given that the series is based on a very famous comic book series, were there many significant departures from the source material when it came to the design for the show?
Great fact. This was actually my third time translating a Garth Ennis property into the screen. I had previously done Preacher with Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg as well. Constantine, which he did an amazing arc on, and then The Boys. And I actually was on Ghost Rider, which he was supposed to be, which he had written for as well. So that was going to be 4, but this is 3rd. So every time you translate it, and especially working with Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg again, they take the core idea. It's like, here's the idea of what we're talking about. It's never going to be the same because otherwise you're just regurgitating what people have already seen. So you got to take the bits of it, take the idea of it, and then go off in a different direction. Because some of it works, some of it doesn't work. And again, I've had the chance to speak with Garth, and he's like, no, you get where I'm going. Because whether it's Derek Robertson or Garth Emmett or Steve Dillon, you're just translating their drawings, but in In the comic book, the Seven Tower is this floating kind of spaceshipy thing. And it's like that went completely against what we were trying to do with this is grounded, this could happen right now, this isn't futuristic sci-fi, this is reality. So it's kind of, we just took that thing and went, yeah, we're not doing that. And we, we're communicating with them, and we had Derica, and they're like, yeah, you get the thing. It's more about these guys are powerful, they're dicks, these guys aren't. And so there was a lot of things, and a lot of, fans will bump on certain things, but usually it's not my world that it's more story thing. They usually go, oh, cool. Well, it's not a spaceship. I go, yeah, well, there it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. But it totally works, though, because it does ground it. The show's about materialism and greed and celebrity worship, and I think it resonates more to kind of make it real, but just slightly not real. And that's, I think, what works. So
yeah, and it was challenging because when you're doing a first season show like The Boys, and it's not a property that people know, it's not Iron Man, it's not it's not like a Batman TV series where everyone knows the background. They don't know it, so you're out there trying to get to like the first episode that you're doing the pilot episode, and you're trying to get Calvin Klein or any of these big name companies to be part of the show, because we go into Times Square and it's like all the billboards and everything. And no one wanted to be part of the show. They're like, I'm sorry, it's a superhero show, and they do what? Oh, they kill people. Yeah, no, that's just not our thing. We're like, but it's not going to be like that. It's going to be really cool. And they're like, no. So, I mean, I think we had, in the first season, 2 or 3 real companies. And as I said, Red Bull came on, and Hostess came on, and a couple companies are like, yeah, it sounds fun. It's Seth Rogen's. It's going to be... But now it's like season 2, everyone sees it, it's like, oh my God, this is like the biggest show in the world. We want to be involved. So, I'm sure it's a lot easier. So,
yeah, it has become quite a sensation. It was Amazon Prime Video's one of its most popular shows. And speaking of accolades and popularity, we'll talk about awards for a second, given that's generally what Gold Derby's obsessed about. You were nominated earlier this year by the ADG for your work on the show. I think you're up against Umbrella Academy, Big Little Lies, Euphoria, and Handmaid's Tale. It's pretty good company. And you've been nominated at the Emmys 3 times, twice for Justified, one of the best shows ever made, and once for Constantine as well, which has had some really amazing genre elements. So talk us through what it means to you as a professional to be nominated, not only by your industry, but by the Academy.
For me, I mean, I've been nominated 3 times for the Emmys, lost 3 times to Game of Thrones. So nice to see that they're not in. Amazing show. They do phenomenal work, but it's really, being on a show like Justified up against Game of Thrones, it's kind of apples and oranges. They've reconfigured the categories a little bit, but for me, it's like accolades are great, and being nominated, it's the respect that you get from the people in the industry, and they know that you do good work, and they see what you do. I mean, getting nominated for the ADG Awards up against people like Mark Worthington, who did Umbrella Academy, and they won for that. It's just these people who do amazing work year after year after year, and it's just for me to be included in that group of people is just that's enough. I mean, if I win sometime, it'll be awesome, but it's just for me, doing quality good work over and over again, and just showing people that I can do something from Justified, which was a dark and gritty show that is supposed to be, take place in Kentucky with a bunch of, Appalachian hillbillies and stuff, to high-end superheroes and stuff. It's like, okay, that's a bit of a range. And it's cool to be able to do different things and to really showcase different looks and different things. So to sit there and say, okay, nominated for The Boys and for Justified and for Constantine, it's a nice range. So I've really had a good time. And I get nominated for the ADG for Preacher too. So I do the superhero stuff quite well. So
all of your major works in the last few years have been recognized by someone. So that's pretty cool. And we'll see what happens at the Emmys coming up later this year. And David, we want to really thank you for your time and great work on The Boys. Really, really loved looking at all your designs on the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to spend time with you.
And so everybody, while you're here, go to goldderby.com right now, make your predictions for The Boys, and don't forget to click subscribe so you can watch all of our chats with great contenders just like Dave.